G'day everybody, I'm Scott Poynton and welcome to another Cooey podcast. This is John Deighan, A Passion to Teach. John is a teacher at the International School of Geneva at the Le Chataigneraie campus, which is where my two sons have gone to school over the past years. I've come to know John through his work in bringing guest speakers to the school. Amazing people who bring great insight and wonderful, extraordinary sometimes, heartbreaking also, but adventurous life experiences to share with the kids at the school. Parents come, teachers come, and John's speakers open the minds of the kids and the people who come to the school. He does this with great passion and commitment, and not without some controversy, as people, parents in particular, sometimes teachers, worry about who he's bringing into the school to speak to the kids. I actually think it's brilliant. It opens the kids' minds to a whole new world, in fact, the real world, outside of the bubble we live in here in Switzerland. John is an absolute inspiration to me, and I hope he inspires you too.
I think John Deighan is one of the stars of Le Chataigneraie, and not only in Fune with this campus, but really in the community. And the quality of speakers that John Deighan brings in are world class. Some of our children don't even realize what they're getting exposed to with the quality of speakers that John Deighan brings in. And he does this not because he wants to bring in speakers, but he does this because he feels something in the pit of his belly that he wants to give back to these students and to the community. And that's the beauty of John Deighan. I don't know if people realize this, because John Deighan always says, no, it's nothing. It's not nothing. One of my favorite speakers was a Palestinian Canadian that he brought here who was a filmmaker and had just made a film. And because the guy was Canadian, I went up to him and I spoke to him, and he said, what are you doing here in Geneva? And I said, blah, blah, blah. And my son is really interested in film. And this guy said to me, he said, if your son is interested in film, he needs to go to Concordia in Montreal. And guess where my son went to university?
There you go.
So that's the impact that John Deighan has. I don't even think he has any idea the type of impact that he has just on everyday conversations that change people's lives because of what he does. Here you have a teacher in an elementary school, in a small school, in a field, that is bringing the world to our children.
He's extraordinary.
Yeah.
Good morning to you, John.
Good morning, Scott.
How are you today?
I'm very well. Keeping myself out of trouble.
Well, it's not easy, I know. And look, this is not a Swiss accent I'm hearing here. Where'd you grow up, John? Where are you from?
Okay, well, I've been away from Scotland, in fact, for 27 years, but I haven't lost 1 ounce of Scottishness. I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. But I was brought up in the northeast of Scotland in a place called Aberdeen. But my parents were from Glasgow, so I consider myself to be from the two places. I went to school in Aberdeen and then went to university. In fact, I went to university in Dundee, Glasgow and Edinburgh. So in fact,
You couldn't decide, mate.
I couldn't decide. No, I just did undergraduate and postgraduate, and studied different things, English and economics. So, yeah.
What inspired you to become a teacher?
Well, after finishing my degree in economics, I went to work in an accountant's office in Glasgow, and I really did not enjoy it. It wasn't very satisfying. I wasn't often speaking to people. I tended to spend a lot of my time in a room on my own, checking accounts. And it was just not my scene, to be honest with you. So then I had a number of uncles and aunts who'd been teachers and who were teachers at the time. They were elderly at that time. They were getting on, near retirement age. But I thought teaching might be quite interesting. And when I went and did my teacher training, I really enjoyed it. And I went and did teacher training, in fact, for secondary, which was to teach economics, business studies, and economic history. And I really enjoyed it. But at that time in the UK, there were a number of problems with education. So I decided then to take a year out, I thought at the time, and went off to Spain to teach English as a foreign language, thinking I would spend 1 year doing that and go back to Scotland. But I never went home, and spent the next 8 years in Spain, and then met my wife, who's also Spanish, and then went off to Portugal and then Venezuela, and then here to the International School of Geneva in Switzerland.
How long have you been here, John?
We've been here now for 13 years.
Okay. And what do you teach here at La Chat?
Right, so I organise the Mother Tongue programme, which is a programme for students who may have another language in the house. That means that their mother or father is maybe Portuguese or Greek or Russian or Swedish, etc. So what we do is we organise formal classes for them after school, 1 hour a week. But it's to give them the chance to have contact with their own country and culture, make them, I suppose, in some ways proud of where they come from. It's very important. We are in an international school, and obviously being Scottish, I would be the first one to veto any type of British or English school in Geneva. So that's not really what we're about. So that's very important. I also teach English in the primary school, and I teach theory of knowledge, which is like a philosophy course in the secondary school. And next year, I'm actually going to go back and teach economics for the first time in 27 years.
Tell us about the guest speaker program and what you think about it and what value it brings to the kids and the parents as well as school in general.
Well, I think it's really invaluable. I mean, for me, if you say what is one of the things that set this school apart from any other school across the world, it is exactly this program. I mean, I can speak for myself, personally sitting in that audience and seeing people like John Pilger come up, Mukesh Kapila. I've seen people walk up on that stage who changed my outlook on life, the courage they have. I mean, I think it's next week we will have people speaking about the Palestine-Israeli conflict, right, from both sides, and peace building, right, really seeing people doing it in action, and then hearing the quality of the questions that the students are asking, seeing that it's really entering their mind frames for the rest of their lives. I think it's extraordinary. I've said it to my classes, for instance, I say, I've never had anything like this when I was young. Did not exist, right? I grew up in the boondocks of the Netherlands and really did not exist. And then I think over time, you just see in all students, I mean, it's extraordinary what it does because these live testimonies of the people's lives, what they do, what they struggle with, it brings the tolerance, it brings the respect, it brings the open-mindedness, it brings the awareness that the world is much bigger than, just this little part or the different parts of the world that they've seen.
What I'm really fascinated about, and when I think about Le Chataigneraie, one of the things I think about, as we talked to Robin Tyner on the podcast, I was celebrating the students here and how well-rounded the students are.
Yep.
Not only are they, great kids and I think, coming out with great marks, but they're really well-rounded international citizens.
Yeah.
And I personally think you play a major role in that, an absolutely fundamental role with the guest speakers program. And could you just tell us a bit about it, John? Because I don't know exactly when it started. I don't think it's been going long. Correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe a few years. But you have had some of the most amazing speakers come to the school to speak to the kids, and not just this school, the other campuses of the International School as well.
Yes.
Tell us about the guest speaker program, mate.
Okay. Well, it all started 8 years ago.
8, okay.
Yeah, we've had over 130 speakers in the 8 years. And it all started 8 years ago with the ex-vice president of Nicaragua, Sergio Ramirez, who in fact became a very good friend, and still is a good friend, in fact. Sergio led the Sandinista revolution in 1979. Well, it had started before that, but basically it came to a culmination with the overthrow of the dictatorship of Antonio Somoza, who had been in power with his family for over 50 years in Nicaragua, which is the second poorest country in the Americas. And Sergio came and told us of this incredible revolution. And apart from obviously the Russian and Cuban revolutions, it was only the third real revolution that had happened in the 20th century. And he was a very, very instrumental part of it. He came and gave 2 fantastic talks to students here at La Chat and also at Campus de National. And then we decided to keep that going. He gave me some contacts. And at the beginning, it was quite small and it was very much directed, I would say, because my wife's a Spanish teacher. So I thought it would be easier to do things in Spanish and also to keep it very much at a class level, not at a year level. But as time went on, I realised that there was definitely a demand to do more things, definitely in English, and also for other cultures and nationalities represented here. I have to say one failing, just as a little stopgap here, the amount of French speakers I have to work on. We have had some, but not as many as I would have liked. Anyway, that's how it all started. And we've been going now for 8 years, and things have been growing and growing. And this year we've had over 30 guest speakers come. And now what we're doing as well is we're working with different departments in the secondary school. For example, with to try and include as many people as possible when we bring the guest speaker. So it's not just a small group of students who take advantage of the visit. We try and get as many children, as many parents, and as many colleagues to come. And if I can share the speaker with another campus, then I do so. It's not always easy, but we try and do it. Also sharing the speaker if they're interested in in speaking, primary and secondary, not just one year group. So, and also trying to make the amount of subjects on which they are speaking as broad and wide as possible.
As I said, I think it's extraordinary. And look, the guest role you've had, I mean, these are some of the most, I hesitate to say the word famous because some of them are famous, or let's say well-known, but you know, some of them are controversial, but some are people that maybe most people have never heard of, but they've got an incredible story to tell. Yeah. And I've been to quite a number of them, and the richness with which they convey their story. They're clearly all passionate speakers. They've got something to say. I mean, just tell us some of the people you've had here. I mean, I know you've had John Pilger, you've had Jermaine Greer. Okay, I'm Australian. I look at those guys, and they've been controversial enough. Robert Eggington, the Indigenous Australian speaker, came all the way from Australia with his wife, very powerful speaker. The list goes on. You've recently had Jon Snow. Tell us about some of the speakers, mate.
Okay, well, I think some of the most impressive speakers, as you say, are people who have a very personal story. One that really sticks out is Eva Schloss, who was Anne Frank's stepsister. She spent a year in Auschwitz as a 15-year-old, and told of how she got off at the platform at Auschwitz in 1944, and Dr. Joseph Mengele was waiting on the platform for the people who were arriving from different parts of Europe, basically to be sent to the gas chambers. We also had Ben Helfgott, another Holocaust survivor. He was the first and only Holocaust survivor to have competed in an Olympic Games. He competed in weightlifting of all sports after having spent 3 years in Buchenwald. And one of the students asked him, in fact, why or what was his impression in the Melbourne 1956 Olympics, coming out into the big stage with all the flags flying, all the people there. What was he thinking? What was he thinking about? And he could have heard a pin drop when he said, "No, I only remember the people who I left behind in the concentration camp. That was all I was thinking about those people, those wonderful people who I had lost." We've had Pat McGee, who was the IRA bomber who planted the Brighton bomb, which tried to blow up the whole of Margaret Thatcher's government. And he came with Joe Berry. Joe Berry's father died in the Brighton bombing. So basically, Joe Berry was sitting in front of the person who'd killed her father. That was extremely powerful because you had a forgiveness, reconciliation, and a dialogue there, which was an example, I think, for all of us to think about. We had two wonderful women who came from Cambodia, acid attack victims, who had boiling oil thrown in their faces, but showed remarkable strength, courage, talking about their experiences and trying to live with this horrendous facial scar. Awful. We had Alex Salmond, head of the Scottish National Party for many years, and First Minister, in fact, in Scotland for 10 years. A very eloquent and pleasant, very interesting politician. Many sports people, we've had disabled sports people, Hannah Cockcroft, who's won, Teresa Perales, who's won more gold medals than anyone else apart from Michael Phelps. We've had various black sports people to talk about racism in sport, in particular black footballers.
Gay rights activists.
Yeah, so gay rights activists. Yeah, Peter Tatchell, who came, who said over the last 40 years, on average, 1 death threat a day. Peter was also kicked unconscious in Moscow in a gay rights demonstration. We've had transgender, and a transgender activist, in fact, very recently, for the first time, Juliet Jack. She spoke about the very, very difficult transition from being a man to a woman. We have had also recently Layla Hussein, an activist against female genital mutilation. So as you can see, we've had a number of people who've come and talked about a number of different things. And already for next year, we've got quite an interesting list of people, including BBC journalist Nick Robinson, anti-apartheid activist Gillian Slovo, whose mother, Ruth First, was killed by the South African police force. We've also got Orlando Figes, Birkbeck College in London historian to come and talk about the 100th anniversary of the Russian Revolution.
And the list goes on.
The list goes on. And we've also got Sir Chris Bonington, who is a famous mountaineer. He's 83, Chris, and he's really looking forward to coming to talk to the students about his climbing. We've got a filmmaker who's just made a fantastic documentary about the footballer George Best. So a whole number of people coming, different issues, but the whole idea is to get the students thinking, reflecting, out of the box, critical thinking, and questioning things. I remember when Peter Tatchell came, Scott, and the first thing he said was, you must always question authority. Always question authority. It's so important. Don't accept what people say. You must question your teachers, you must question your parents, but you also must question yourself. And one of the most important things about these speakers as well is, if you like, the cards are on the table, you've turned a few over. Now, do I agree with that? Is that right? Is that wrong? So you're constantly getting yourself to think about your opinions, your views. You know, how often have we heard people say, oh, I'm too old to change my opinion? You're never too old to change your opinion. Never. You can always, even at an advanced age, think about different things in a different way. But bringing people in who've had personal experiences and who can communicate some kind of idea or reflection, I think enriches the whole education of the experience here at the school. We're lucky because in general, the administration support me. The parents have supported me fantastically, and the colleagues as well. So I'm very, very lucky. And most importantly of all, the students are very happy with these speakers and they enjoy coming along and listening to such interesting people.
What about Mr. Deighan, all the guest speakers that he has?
No, that is just, I don't know how he has the time just to bring a lot of people, very influential people. And then he's also a really good spokesperson. He knows how to talk to people and engage.
He invites a different range of people in all walks of life who've done many different things in different fields. And I think that's really indicative of his work ethic. He has an incredible work ethic because the people he invites are amazing and in a lot of cases the best in their field. And the fact that we get to experience that at, high school level is amazing.
Which has been your favourite speaker?
It's so difficult to say. There are so many. I had the honour to introduce a speaker because he does open that up to students as well. And I introduced Layla Hussein, who's a British activist on FGM and ending FGM. So that was incredible.
Jon Snow, he was amazing because he reached our level because he is not, for his age, he was very kind of modern and the parents got to come and it was just entertaining. It really breaks up the day and it makes the week so diverse, and he was absolutely incredible. And just talking about foreign affairs, and at the moment everything is rife with Brexit and Trump, and he kind of put everything in perspective, which was quite interesting.
Well, I think that the fact that we get so many speakers whose viewpoints we don't necessarily share and who have different outlooks on life and different life experiences than we do. It's very in the spirit of the school of kind of internationalism and accepting everyone. It just helps us broaden our minds and become more accepting people in general. And I think that that's a very admirable thing for Mr. Deighan to try to do.
It's clear you get a lot of joy out of it, John. It's a real mission in life, I think, for you to bring these people in and to really get this diverse thinking to the kids, and not without controversy. You have had that general support. If you didn't get the support, it wouldn't be happening, but it hasn't been without controversy. You've had speakers come where parents, I think in particular, sometimes colleagues, why are you bringing that person? And it hasn't just been a gentle rebuff, it's been quite sharp at times. Tell us a bit about that. I know when you had the Palestinian doctor.
Yeah, Dr. Izzaldin Abu-Laish.
He was amazing, and Robert Eggington drew some controversy too. Just tell us a bit about some of the controversy you faced with some of the speakers.
Well, with regard to Izzaldin Abu-Laish, remember the story, just very quickly to recap. First Palestinian doctor to work in an Israeli hospital. So he is saving Israeli patients' lives every day. Second thing, from Gaza, which, as I think most people know, is a prison in itself. These people are caged in on a daily basis. They have restricted access, let's say, to getting out of the area. It's very, very difficult. Things are made difficult for them, which creates a whole load of social problems. The Israeli army sent a tank to sit in front of Dr. Awalash's house one day. The tank went away, but the next day it reappeared and actually bombed the house. In the house at the time were 5 of his 6 children, 3 of whom, 3 daughters, ages 9, 12, 16, if I remember correctly, all killed. The one son very badly injured, and another daughter almost blinded. I brought Dr. Awalash because he's got a very important message to give in respect to reconciliation and peace. After 3 years of this terrible, terrible incident, he wrote a book which was entitled I Shall Not Hate. Now, if that kind of message isn't important, well, I don't know what is. I did have from a small group of Israeli parents not only a boycott, but a very serious complaint about why I had invited Dr. Awalash. They said that Dr. Awalash was a terrorist. They said that he was a member of Hamas, all of which is completely untrue. And I basically, during a couple of days, I'm not going to exaggerate, it was just a couple of days, I actually had a couple of very disagreeable and unpleasant conversations with these people who obviously were not willing to be as open-minded as the students were, and certainly not as open-minded as Dr. Awalash was. So that was one instance. Another instance was Peter Tatchell, the gay rights activist. Peter's a wonderful man and a wonderful activist. He's not sitting in some office pontificating about how we should do things. He actually gets out into the street and protests himself. He's always in the front line, and he puts himself in difficult positions. He outed a number of Church of England archbishops who were at the same time condemning homosexuality. As I said to you before, he's actually stood in the front line of protests in places like Moscow. He tried to make a citizen's arrest on Robert Mugabe, who has introduced some horrendously anti-gay laws in that country. And he's also protested as well in places like Uganda, where homosexuality is still punishable by the death penalty. So he's not somebody who takes his activism in a very light manner. When he came, I had a few problems with colleagues and with parents who felt that he was an inappropriate choice of guest speaker. The reason? In 1984, Peter had written an article for a man who'd asked him to write this article, who turned out afterwards to be a paedophile. And Peter had written some short extract, very short in fact, about underage sex. Now at that time, age of consent in the UK for having sex was 18. Peter wanted to lower it to 16. It's quite a sensible thing when you think about it, because that meant that 17 and 18-year-olds would not be sent to jail for having had sex. But all of a sudden, certain newspapers, right-wing newspapers in the UK, got a hold of this and started to go on about how Peter Tatchell was promoting child sex. And that is completely incorrect, inappropriate, and just downright lies. So I had to defend him in front of 2 or 3, let's say, quite vociferous people who were very much against him coming. He came, he went to Campus des Nations, he came here and did 3 excellent talks, plus a workshop for students who are finding their sexuality of 16 and 17 years of age. Because one thing he did, which really made me very, very intransigent in this respect, we will not accept homophobia in this school. We will not accept that kind of degrading racism and hatred that is imposed on young people who express themselves as being openly gay. That is zero toleration to that kind of ignorance and that kind of prejudice. Just completely unacceptable.
I think you've been very courageous in what you're doing, John, and bringing these people in, because you're having to fight a good fight sometimes. But I know from my own kids' experience and a lot of the parents who come, myself included, that these presentations just absolutely open the world for the kids.
I think the thing that impresses me about the speakers programme is that he always brings speakers that will challenge the kids. And I know some of the speakers he brings are not popular with some of the parents. I think sometimes the kids will hear things that they will not have heard from the parents at home, or they will not have, read in the newspapers.
What are some of the examples of that, can you think?
There are quite a few, but I know sometimes I've had speakers from the Middle East, and you may get parents who are on completely different side of the fence from where that speaker is coming from. But I think the speakers that John's brings, there's always a real message to them, and the way they can address the kids directly. If it gets some of the kids in the room thinking about a particular issue in a slightly different way, then I think he's done a good job.
What would you say has been your favourite speaker that he's brought?
For me, a really special moment was when John McCarthy came. And I was a teenager when he was captured. And that went on for a good long while, and his girlfriend at the time did a lot of campaigning to try and get him freed. But to hear him stand in this room and describe the day that he was captured and how he was taken out the back of the car in great detail, just to hear that first-hand account of history, to me that was really, really special.
And John himself, how do you find Mr. John Deighan? I call him Mr. Passion.
He's very passionate. I have to say, I first met John when I came to the school, and that was 10 years ago. And I think he stood out because of his strong Scottish accent, and I'm from Glasgow myself. So when I heard him speak to the kids, it was, transported me to being back at school. And I think some of the kids in the primaries get this very deep, booming voice that are a little bit scared of him.
Yes.
But for my 3 girls at the school, they were completely used to that, because that's how their father speaks. But I have to say, he's just so passionate about what he does. He goes above and beyond. He takes great effort in all the details. He takes so much time. There's so much preparation. Emails backwards and forwards. It's a family affair. Lola's involved, Jack's involved. They look after the guests when they arrive. From the moment they get off the plane to the moment they go back on the plane, John is with them absolutely every step of the way. And I know some of the guests have told me how much they appreciate that. And then they'll tell other people, and other people are encouraged to come. And it also amazes me just the calibre of the guests he gets. You sometimes wonder why, and it's because he asks.
We live in a bubble here in Switzerland. Yes. It's a wonderful country to live in, but it's safe. You can walk down the streets, pretty high income, great services. If you get sick, you've got hospitals to go to, etc., etc., etc. It's a beautiful place to live. And the kids grow up in a bit of a bubble. They're in an international school. Through your guest speakers, I think you're exposing them to what's going on in the world, and that the world is not always a beautiful place. There's some great stories, really positive, happy stories, but there's some grim stories too. And I think exposing the students to that whole range of experiences from other people with very passionate speakers, it's an absolute gift. How do you get these people to come? You ring them up and you say, "G'day, it's John here, and I'd like you to come to the school." How do you do that?
Right, okay, well, basically the way I go around it is I read a lot of newspapers and magazines. Every week I must go on to about 4 or 5 newspapers' websites, and in fact, every day, in fact. I also subscribe to a number of journals. So I'm constantly on the lookout for somebody who I think would be interesting for coming to the school. It's important not to always choose the same subject, obviously, whether it be gay rights or women's rights or sport or the environment. It's very, very important as well to have a wide range of topics. But it's also good to choose people who might not get the opportunity to have a public forum. So basically, you take your 2 or 3 famous people, like your Jermaine Greers or your Jon Snows, Alex Salmons, you have them, 2 or 3 of them per year, because they normally, some of them, in fact, surprisingly don't charge you anything, or very, very little. But if you've got somebody who is doing groundwork, for example, Adam Smith, who's got the Real Junk Food Project, it's a wonderful project in Leeds, in the north of England, whereby he recycles food thrown out by supermarkets, serves it up in a cafe, and provides that to homeless people or people who might not have money to eat food, or families. But also at the same time, he is reusing food. that would be normally thrown out. So he came, for example, last year. So he wouldn't normally have the chance to speak to young people. That's why we brought him. So it's getting really a mix between people and subject area. It's also important as well, I think, to try and get a mix between female and male speakers. And I have to say, I've been poor in that a lot of the people we've had coming have actually been white Anglophone males. So that's something I need to improve on. But in general, you try and get a contact with them. Sometimes you've got to be quite determined. For example, Helen Pankhurst, Dr. Pankhurst, Sylvia Pankhurst's great-granddaughter, that was difficult. It took me about 3 months to get a contact with her.
Don't want to show me ignorance here, mate, but who is Sylvia Pankhurst?
Sorry, Sylvia Pankhurst was one of the original suffragettes.
Ah, lovely.
So I felt it was really important she came. So I went to places where she'd worked. I went to publishing houses. Nobody seemed to have a direct contact with her. And then finally, through the Sylvia Pankhurst Foundation, there I managed to get a direct contact with her. But, it's a lot of work sometimes. Then other times, you're amazed at just how easy it is to get in contact with people and how willing they are to come to the school, like John Snow, for example. And he came for nothing, really. He wanted his flight, and that was really it. There was nothing else. He just wanted to come and talk to young people. And then obviously you get other people who ask you for ludicrous amounts of money. They ask you for 5-star hotels. Can the secretary come? All this kind of stuff. And obviously there is when I say no. Because anyone who's going to ask for a huge amount of money to talk to students is not worth having. They're obviously thinking about other things. Yeah. Now, that's fine if they're going to talk to a bank, a corporate, a big organisation. That's fine. But I haven't got either the patience or the money to be dealing with people who don't really see talking to young people as the main goal of their visit.
Coming to the end, John, what inspires you, mate? What gets you out of bed in the morning? I mean, this guest speaker program inspires me, and the work you put into that hints that, this is something you see as very, very important. You do the mother tongue program for the kids. These are things of service.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that you really put a lot of effort into creating opportunities for these kids to really go out into the world with as broad an education, as broad a view as possible. What gets you out of bed in the morning?
What gets me out of bed in the morning are a number of things. The first thing is my parents were very humble, simple people. My father worked in a shipyard for over 45 years. He started working when he was 14. He never really had many opportunities, but he gave me, as did my mother, the rules and the principles. You're honest with yourself, first of all, but you're honest with other people. If you can help someone, do it. Give your time to other people who haven't got as many opportunities as yourself. Or, in this particular case, people who will take advantage and appreciate the opportunities they're getting. They instilled in me these kinds of attitudes, which I think have served me throughout my life. And as a teacher, it's very much a vocational job. I don't come here every day for the money. I don't come here every day for power or influence or any of that kind of stuff. I'm not interested. What I'm interested in doing is making this world a better place. And the young people are the people that are going to change things, not our generation. We can try and help, but now it's up to them, whether it be environmental issues, whether it be with regard to social issues, sport, culture, whatever. It's up to them now. And if you can change, or if you can direct, or if you can influence one or two of these young, wonderful people we've got in this great institution, because it really is. It's a fantastic school, Scott. I'm privileged to work here. Great ethics, and it's a foundation. It's not your typical international private school, all about making money and cost cutting and all the rest of it. We haven't got that here. And being a foundation is very useful for that, because it also gives you a certain amount of liberty to do the things you want to. But these young people can do things and change things. So, two options. You can either sit there with your arms folded and say, well, not going to change anything. Or you can get out, a bit of passion, a bit of drive, and a bit of hard work, and it reaps very positive results.
I think you're an absolute inspiration, John Deighan. I think that,
Tell my wife that.
I will, if you tell my wife. I think that the school is so fortunate to have you here. And now for my kids, it's been an absolute blessing.
Oh, thank you.
It really is. I think every school needs a John Deighan, mate. And really appreciate you talking to me today. And let's get this story out there. And hopefully, other teachers in other schools around the world will hear this and think, well, maybe there's an interesting person down the road that I can invite, come and speak to our students.
Absolutely.
So, the word spreads, and I think the inspiration and the passion with which you do it spreads as well. So thanks again, John, and I look forward to coming to the next speaker.
Yeah, thank you very much, Scott.
You've been listening to another CUI podcast. John Deighan, Passion to Teach. I hope you found John to be as inspiring as I do. I think every school in the world needs a John Deighan. What a great opportunity for the kids to hear the guest speakers that John organises. I'm Scott Poynton. Thanks for listening.